After what's felt like an eternity, Blake Snell has finally signed. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, March 19th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White and Chris the Welsh. Today on the show, Blake Snell has signed with the San Francisco Giants. All right, not too bad. More injuries, this time to Yoan Duran, and we'll break down our expectations for top prospects this season. But first, Welshy, it's only appropriate that you are on the pod the night that Blake Snell signs. It just makes too much sense.
Oh, man, I'm just trying to get paid. I'm just trying to, my man. Everybody was like, are you going to do the Snell impression? I feel like it's getting worse because the expectation is out there. But it is no coincidence that big signings happening. You were even saying, you're like, what? Weren't you on the Soto signing? I think some big things happen. We also have a couple other pieces that are out there. But it does feel like this is the long night, the long awaited signing we've been waiting for. You know, it's hilarious too. This felt like the signing that opens the floodgates for other guys, but everybody else has made their move except for Jordan Montgomery. So good on the Giants for making the move. And I know we're going to have a lot of talk about my boy who just needs to stay hydrated, man. Just trying to get paid.
Yes, he does. Blake Snell signs with the Giants on a 2-year, $62 million deal that includes an opt-out after the first season. Each of Snell, Cody Bellinger, and Matt Chapman had to take similar opt-out deals like this. Maybe Scott Boras finally outsmarted himself. Who knows? In the end, Snell remains in the NL West and in another good ballpark to pitch in. We talked extensively about Snell this offseason. He's a high-variance pitcher, comes with injury and performance risk, but when he's on, we know the upside is massive. It's Cy Young upside. The 2 years that he's been healthy and been at his best, he has won Cy Young awards in each of those seasons. Obviously, Scott, this is a very unique situation because it's so late into spring training, but what do you think about this move to the Giants and when we might actually see Snell pitch in the regular season?
Well, I'm looking forward to having more reading material on that because I don't really know what kind of side sessions has he been conducting on his own. Presumably he hasn't just been sitting around eating Cheetos, but we don't know. We don't know where he stands in that buildup. And even, if he says I'm exactly where I should be, I suspect the Giants will still want him to have some kind of abbreviated buildup. They're not going to throw him right out there, throw him right into the fire without him, doing a little throwing for them. So hopefully we see him before the end of April. I don't think it's a given we do, but hopefully. Probably.
You think a whole month?
Well, normally they say it takes 6 weeks for a pitcher to build up.
Yeah, my only caveat, we were talking about this a tiny bit off here. My only disagreement is, as far as the ramp up goes, him going out and throwing a 4-inning simulated session tells you the work that's been going on. Cause you're not going to, like you said, you're not going to get up after with your, clean your Cheeto dust off your fingers and go through a 4-inning simulated game. You're going to work your way up to that level. So by virtue of throwing a 4-inning simulated game, I kind of assume he's been working through some of those sessions. So much so that the team is comfortable enough dropping $30 million. So just my only thing would be, you sign with the team, you get in, you throw a side session or two, maybe you get one game in, maybe one live game in over on extended spring training. I think there's the possibility, and this is my whole lead up to you saying the end of April that shocks me. I think there's a possibility that Snell could maybe only miss one start, or they could just alter and adjust the rotation. How sometimes, I haven't looked at the Giants rotation, but sometimes they don't need, the fifth starter right away. I think he could be available by April 8th. Now, this is just me assuming, obviously, but I think it's kind of dramatic to think it would be outside of April, even though I understand the logic of it. I just don't know if they invest that type of money for a full month out. But I could be wrong.
Here's the thing. They didn't invest much money. And that's fine. Maybe it's mid-April. Maybe it's even early April.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how long it's going to be, is my point. But it presumably won't be the first time through. But, here we have a reigning Cy Young winner. By definition, not a one-hit wonder, because this is his second Cy Young. Waiting until after St. Patrick's Day to sign for a contract that is only 2/3 the total value of Masataka Yoshida's. That just seems strange, right? That's nothing anyone would have predicted heading into the offseason. And I think it reveals where the league stands on Blake Snell, which is that they don't trust him at all. And you know what? I don't blame them. Blake Snell is the ultimate Charizard. And if you weren't here for the genesis of that term, what a Charizard is an overpowering force that's just as likely to turn its fiery breath around on you and spend all season charring you, or half the season charring. That's actually what happened with Blake Snell in both 2021 and 2022. Blake Snell in 2021, he entered August with an ERA of 5.44. And then the very next year, 2022, he entered the All-Star break with an ERA of 5.22. And in both of those cases, he had made 3 starts up to that point, 6 or more innings. He was utterly useless. In fact, he was a negative on your fantasy team. There was a point both those seasons where I was suggesting you just cut your losses and drop them. Hopefully you didn't, because his best came after that. But now we got this hurried buildup, delayed signing. Now, even last year, 5 walks per 9 innings. That was by far the most among qualifying pitchers, even though Snell won the Cy Young. He was the biggest overachiever by FIP and by expected ERA among full-time starters. And now there's this hurried buildup. I mean, who knows how that's going to affect him? I mean, he already has such consistency issues. Like his consistency issues go far beyond any other players. And so what if he gets off to that kind of start again? Here's the thing. Even if you trust there's another side of the coin, there's no way to predict when you're going to see that other side of the coin. And since we've established that bad Blake Snell is horrible for your team, I'm thinking, the more I think about it, the more I think I was crazy for ever drafting him. Who wants to deal with that? I mean, I'm all about building my teams around strikeouts this year, and Snell would seem like the perfect choice, but he could single-handedly ruin you. Even if he turns things around, you might make a mistake along the way, assuming he'll do it now and it doesn't happen. Or like I said, maybe he goes the whole season charring you. There's just no telling. But he's so bad when he's bad and so good when he's good that it's going to be a major headache.
And last year was kind of a microcosm of that too, because if you look at his first 9 starts, I mean, through May 19th, the first 6 weeks of the season, Blake Snell had a 5.40 ERA last season. And then he, obviously did what he did. I think he had a sub 1.5 ERA the final 22 starts. And that's kind of who Blake Snell is, just throughout his career. There's these extreme highs and there's these extreme lows. And we saw that last year as well. The price tag over the past week, the NFBC ADP is 81.9 as the 22nd starting pitcher off the board, sandwiched between Zach Eflin and Jesus Luzardo. Scott, it kind of sounds like you're just out there.
Yeah. Look, I got him like 25th in my starting pitcher rankings. And, if we hear a really optimistic timeline like the one Chris Welsh laid out, then I might move him up a little bit. I originally had him in my top 10 before I knew he was going to be delayed. But yeah, again, the more I think about it, I'm like, do I really want to stake my entire season on that? And I don't think I do. I don't think I do.
But you're taking at pick 82, you're not staking your entire season on it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Even if you're going into the original ADP in the 60s or whatever, you're really not staking your entire season on it. And here's one thing I would say. Obviously, there are unknowns that are kind of floating around with Blake Snell. But if there's one thing is like, we kind of know what we're in for. We do know he is a slow starter. And we saw a major change. The dramatic, last 20 whatever starts it was also attached to him finally getting through 6 innings and also making that changeup become a prominent part of his pitching repertoire. 18% usage with a 46% whiff rate. The guy had 2 other pitches of 53% or higher whiff rate in general. So like we've seen him mature. So we know what those things are. What we don't know is that mystery of what you're talking about. What does that ramp up look like? I don't think the fear should be as dramatic as it is with Blake Snell, especially that he could like ruin your team. If you think now he can ruin your team, why? I mean, you were kind of asking the question, why did you have him before? Why would you not think that before? I don't think much has changed. I think people are making way too much about spring training. This is check off your bingo card, me talking about me at spring training. But like, I'm around there a lot. Guess what? Zach Gallen did not throw in his first live game until March 1st or March 2nd and what it was. These guys don't get a whole bunch of games in. They work some side sessions, and we are obviously without full information. We're under the interpretation that like he has been running some side sessions. He'll get one or two more with the Giants now, and he may even get into like that final game that they throw. All I'm saying is I don't actually think much has changed with Blake Snell. Now we just have the confirmation that he's got a team.
Right.
This is probably a maximum in my mind of 2 starts, maybe only 1. So I'm just kind of back on board. But if you weren't on board before, nothing
right.
on board or off
maybe
board.
Nothing has
really
changed. Maybe nothing has changed. Maybe the only thing that's changed is he made gains with his changeup and curveball last year and is now going to be more consistent than ever. The 5 walks per 9 innings make me think that's a long shot, but it's possible. That is one possible scenario. But here's the like you say, okay, well, you're drafting him 80th overall. You're not staking your whole season to it. If you're drafting him 80th overall, particularly given his history of turning things around in July and August, you're leaving him in your lineup, and you're just taking the 520, 150, whatever comes with it, and like, at what point do you remove him? Probably never, because of the way July went 2 years ago and August went 3 years ago. You're probably just riding it out for better or worse. So you're staking your whole season to him.
But you always were. I mean, that's like you in November when we thought he was going to get.
That's what's changed. I've changed. I don't think Blake Snell's changed. I have.
Yeah, and I think one other thing to add that I do want to back on your side. 'Cause I'm not trying to be the defender of Blake Snell or anything like that. I have some share. No, but I don't think it's. I just don't think it's this dramatic event where it's like, ladies and gentlemen, Blake Snell's not going to ruin everything. But what I do think is a new piece of information that, because I don't really think any of those things have changed, is that no team was willing to invest in him. And I think that's kind of something that's looming around in your head more. And I'm with that. What was that about? I actually just think it's about pure commitment. Obviously, Boris has a little situation with it, but the Yankees made offers. The Astros made an offer. We have tons of offers. It just didn't meet what Boris wanted and what Snell wanted. I'm not sure that is like Blake Snell is bad and everybody knows he's really bad. The warts are there. Everybody knows the warts. He just improves. He kind of like works around those warts. He works around the walk issues and it works around the slow start. And then he maximizes that. And we just kind of always known that. So if no team making a commitment to him makes it a little bit more scary, okay, I'm with that. But he goes to a pretty good ballpark and he continuously stays in like top 10 ballpark factors wherever he pitches. It's, going to the Padres, pitching with the Rays. They're like 4th right now. And now you're going to the Giants. It's a good ballpark. There's some decent offense. Division's kind of tough. He's still the big strikeout pitcher who's in the same division last year as he was, where he was striking out everybody left and right. But we know he's going to walk, and I just don't think he's going to miss more time. But that's the me being a little bit more subjective about it, being like, oh, I think this and you think that. That's where I think the big disagreement is. But I really don't think anything has actually changed with Blake Snell.
All right, we do have to move on, but again, Blake Snell signs a 2-year deal with the Giants, $62 million with an opt-out after the first season, and it should be a fun year in the NL West. Granted, the Dodgers are still obviously the favorites, but the Padres, Giants, D-backs, they're all going to be in the mix for a wild card spot, presumably this season. Let's quickly promote a few things. Thanks to everybody watching us live on YouTube. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. And it's that time of year, the madness. It's bracket time, so get yours in now on the CBS Sports app. You can play in men's and women's pools with friends and join our challenges for the chance to win a new Nissan Rogue and trips to the 2025 Final Four. Get the CBS Sports app or visit cbssports.com/play to start filling out your brackets. No purchase necessary. See terms and rules for details. And if you want to compete against Scott, Chris, and me, and maybe the Welsh, we can get them in there too. We actually have a bracket dedicated to FBT and our listeners. Scan the QR code on the screen and click on the link in the pod and YouTube description to get in on the fun. If you've joined our bracket in previous years, you're already in. All you got to do is make your picks. The winner of the bracket group will get a shout out here on the podcast. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll run through the rest of the news, Jhoan Duran, and then get to the top prospects here in 2024 right after this.
It's time for the madness.
And CBS Sports HQ has your wall-to-wall NCAA tournament coverage. We got your game highlights, expert analysis, and insights all the way to the Final Four. Start and end your March Madness coverage with CBS Sports HQ.
Welcome back in. Let's talk about this injury to Jhoan Duran, who will start the season on the IL with a moderate right oblique strain. The Twins hope to have a better idea of his return timeline within the week. I just kind of assume he's going to miss the first month of the season. That's how I've been treating the oblique injury to Josh Lowe. Another oblique here with Jhoan Duran. I think
it sounds like this one's more severe than the Josh Lowe one. That one was described as very mild. This one's described as moderate. So I'm thinking a quarter of the season.
And the Lowe one was, I think it's been looming for a while. The Duran one just happened. So it's just on the precipice.
Yeah. So, Scott, what are you thinking about where you're dropping Duran to in your rankings?
I dropped him behind like Jose Leclerc and Robert Suarez.
So way down there. All right. So I dropped him to like my 14th relief pitcher at 106th overall. So I don't know. Maybe I got to drop him down a little bit more. Welsh, what do you think about the price here? How far does it drop for Duran?
I think he's probably got to sit in that like 17 to 20 closer area. I mean, hilariously, you're going to probably having Devin Williams and Duran in a similar range for people if you want to make that speculation. I don't blame Scott for doing that, though, because when I looked at the Devin Williams stuff, I'm like, can I really take even him over a Jose Leclerc, who looks like he's going to have early saves, and if he can hold on, he's going to keep going? Same thing would be going on with Duran. As great as he is, as great as these guys are, how much can you eat 6 weeks, 8 weeks of losing a player not getting saves? It's just, they just kind of become off my draft boards. It almost doesn't matter the number. It's just like, I'm going to pivot. And more than anything, Duran is actually making me want to press a little bit higher on closers. I know a lot of people don't like to pay up for closers, but as much as I like Evan Phillips, I might be trying to reach a little bit more for guys like Camilo Duvall to make sure I get one of those, and then maybe like a Craig Kimbrell a little bit later.
The depth at closers taking a hit for sure, because it's in neither of Williams or Duran's case do we have, in neither of their cases do we have like a clear-cut replacement. We know exactly who's going to be getting saves in the meantime. So that really chisels away at what seemed like a robust closer group. It's still robust compared to like last year, but it's not as robust as it was before those injuries. I also want to clarify, I'm saying Duran, I think he could miss a quarter of the season. That's still half of what the time Devin Williams is missing. So I moved Devin Williams behind even like Carlos Estevez and the real junkie closers. So I haven't moved Duran down quite that far, but he's like a tier up from that.
Who is next up for the Twins in their bullpen? So they got Griffin Jax and Brock Stewart. Griffin Jax last year, a 3.86 ERA, a 1.18 whip, just over a strikeout per inning, gets lots of ground balls, 56% ground ball rate last year, averages 96, 97 on the fastball. Brock Stewart, an interesting case. Before last year, hadn't pitched in baseball since 2019. Then comes in and throws 27 2/3 innings with the Twins last year, a .65 ERA, a 108 whip, 12.7 K per nine, and a 19.8% swinging strike rate. So if we're just talking about whiffs based on last year, I mean, Brock Stewart was one of the best in terms of doing that. So Scott, where do you think the Twins go here? Griffin Jax or Brock Stewart?
Yeah, I mean, I think just given how dominant Stewart was last year, that would be the first place I'd go if I was managing the Twins. But I don't know how much, if Rocco Baldelli, having had Griffin Jax around longer, might have a higher level of trust with him. He was also one of the managers. Remember back when Taylor Rogers, we considered him the Twins closer, and it was always so frustrating because Baldelli was so non-committal to using him in the ninth. And so he may just revert back to that. I think he's already geared that way, and Jhoan Duran was just a special talent in his eyes. So I'm not making an especially big investment in Brock Stewart. I would probably draft Yoel Payamps and Abner Uribe over him. But if you're asking me to choose who I want from the Twins bullpen, I would choose Brock Stewart over Griffin Jax.
And that is why he is a professional broadcaster, that's Scott White. My next question for the Welsh, Rank the Brewers and Twins relievers. What do you got?
Oh, all of them together. All right. I'm going to go. Pat Murphy is such a pain too. He's just like, I don't really see a guy. It's going to be a leverage situation. I would probably go Payamps, Uribe. I'm a Jax guy. I think Jax also having a fantastic spring. Struck out 10 in 6 innings, only given up 2 hits so far. Roster Resource already put him as the closer, but I do think they're going to go, just kind of move through leverage situations. So again, this is going to go Payamps, Uribe, and I think Uribe could be the best of all of them, then Jax, and then everybody else.
All right, let's get to some other news and notes. The Brewers confirmed that Jackson Chourio will make the opening day roster, which makes sense after signing that 8-year extension earlier in the offseason. NFBC ADP over the past week, 122.8 as the 32nd outfielder off the board. Scott, we know that you've been much higher on Chourio throughout the offseason. You have him 75th overall as your 29th outfielder.
Yeah.
I assume this report doesn't change anything for you, but do you think Chourio will start to tick up now in ADP with the confirmation?
Yeah, I'm going to guess I've drafted him for the last time because there's just going to be too much competition for him now that he's been confirmed. Not that I don't think he deserves it, but it's, I've already grown accustomed to taking him at a certain place, and I don't know that I have the stomach for taking him earlier. By the way, you say I have him 79th overall. I don't think I've ever taken him that high.
75th.
I think I just have that whole group of outfielders higher in my overall rankings than the consensus does. So in the flow of the draft, I don't think 79 for Chourio, but I imagine he'll probably get pushed up to about that.
That's even a little bit higher than me. I've got him. I've had him here for a while. That's one of the things with the rookies, that the guys that I thought that were going to break camps, like Jackson Holiday, like Langford, and like Chourio, I've tried to keep them up a majority of the time. I've got him at 87. So 87 overall. I haven't pushed all my outfielders up. The same question, if you'd ask me, I don't know if this changes too much. Maybe there's like a little bit more confirmation. Probably doesn't. I've been putting him at a spot where I think he's going to break camp.
Yeah.
So we're talking top prospects later in the podcast as well. And we actually have this new projection system called the CTW, Chris V. Welsh projections. And we're breaking them out today for the first time. Last year in the minors, Chourio did this as a 19-year-old, 282 batting average, 22 homers, 44 steals. Welsh, what do you think is a realistic projection here? Again, we're not talking upside. Median projection, 50th percentile. What is realistic to expect from Chourio this season?
This is the anti-Bat X that hates rookies. Of course, I'm going to like them, but I'm going to be a little bit more strict on some of these players. I feel like I've actually got a really good gauge on rookie stolen bases ever since last year. But my, what did you call it? The CTW projections?
Yeah, Chris V. Welsh projection. Yeah.
All right. My Jackson Chourio projection, 255, 18 homers, 70 runs, 75 RBIs with 35 stolen bases. So I am going to probably beat. There's actually one of these rookies we're going to talk about that I think I have a lower stolen base projection than, but I think Chourio is going to make up for what could be some maybe early not getting the ball in the air stuff. Whenever he gets on base, I think he's going to be aggressive on the base paths. We saw him steal over 40 in the minors. I don't think that's going to change at the major league level. If his batting average really stinks, we'll see where that goes. But if he's hitting 250, I think he's stealing over 30 bases.
All right. Aaron Boone said that Aaron Judge should be good to go for Wednesday's game against the Pirates, but we've heard that before, so we'll see. Shohei Ohtani is set to begin a throwing progression this weekend, and manager Dave Roberts hasn't ruled out the possibility of Ohtani playing the field later in the season. Outfield and first base were both kind of thrown out there as possibilities. I guess, they could give Freeman a half day off if they wanted to. I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but it would be fun if it did.
How about shortstop before? No. In the majors, remember he got outfield eligibility the last time. No, I think it was when interleague play before NL had the DH and on interleague play, Joe Madden didn't want to take him.
Did he? Did he
out
ever
of lineup? Yeah, he got outfield eligibility. It was he appeared 7 times in the outfield in 2021.
So I got it on Yahoo. I you know what would be great though? It just following the circle is if they put him at second base and then just kick Gavin Lux out, which by the way, less of the arm needed at second base outside of obviously first, but I would love that. Let's get Shohei Ohtani at second.
Bryce Harper hopes to return to action Friday in either a Grapefruit League game or minor league game. He's dealing with soreness in his lower back, and Please, that would be so welcome. I got him in tout orders this weekend, and I also got him on my TGFBI team. So we need you, Bryce Harper. Kenley Jansen was scratched from his outing Monday with lower back tightness, but Alex Cora said Jansen will make an appearance on Tuesday. They also said we're kind of up against it here. So any other delay that happens, Kenley Jansen might not be ready for opening day. Jung-Hoo Lee, who's been slowed by a left hamstring strain, tightness rather, we'll go with that, will be reevaluated on Tuesday to determine when he will return. Byron Buxton, good thing Towers is in here. After yesterday with Yuri Perez, I don't think he could have taken this. Byron Buxton was scratched Monday with lower back tightness, though the team said it's minor, and Buxton is expected back soon. Okay, DJ LeMahieu is dealing with a pretty significant bone bruise on his right foot and might not be ready for opening day. If that's the case, it looks like Oswaldo Cabrera would fill in the meantime. Louis Varland is expected to open the season in the Twins rotation with Anthony DeSclafani hurt. He's dealing with a forearm injury. Gavin Stone has officially been named as the Dodgers' 5th starter to open the season. Ronaldo Lopez will be the Braves' 5th starter to open their season. And Garrett Crochet, how things have changed. He is now the White Sox opening day starter and has had a great spring. Scott, how would you rank Gavin Stone, Ronaldo Lopez, Garrett Crochet? Late round sleepers.
I think Reynaldo Lopez is a distant third because I don't think he has the potential to pitch as well as either Stone or Crochet. Though, if you're talking a deep league scenario, Lopez might have the highest floor just by virtue of he holds a rotation spot for the Braves. But I'll go Crochet slightly over Stone. His fastball has averaged like 98 this spring and a higher spin rate, and it just looked like a completely overpowering pitch. We still don't know that he can go beyond 3 innings, so there's definitely a floor concern there with Crochet, but the upside is exciting. The upside's exciting for Stone too. We've talked before about how his mechanics got messed up last spring because of a blister on his toe, and there was a pitch tipping issue during his first go around the majors as well. Kind of what I read that part of what clinched the spot for him, he struck out 8 of the 11 batters he faced against the Korean national team in one of the exhibitions they were playing over there. So that was kind of the clincher for Gavin Stone. And remember, his minor league numbers in 2022 were just absurd. So that's where I stand with those 3: Crochet, Stone, and then Reynaldo Lopez. But all of them are draftable in any league. 12 teams or deeper, I'd say.
And if these StatCast numbers are correct, because we do have StatCast data from that game between the Dodgers and the Korean national team, Gavin Stone had 17 swinging strikes on 49 pitches, which is just absurd.
Wow.
So
maybe he should be first. I don't know.
He's I have Stone over Crochet.
Yeah.
I got to see Crochet throw a couple times over at White Sox camp. Didn't get to see Stone, but Stone, the biggest thing for me, he's just not walking guys. He's got 1 walk so far this spring, 9 2/3. I don't know. I don't think that's counting the Korea outing, but he has just been consistent. Like you guys said, like getting rid of those yips, getting rid of the pitch tipping. That's critical here because he has got a dominant strikeout changeup that was flourishing in the minors and absolutely fell apart here. If all of that's fixed, the confidence is there. Dodgers are easy wins. I know it can get to 6-man rotation, and at some point you're going to probably bump yourself out. But I'm going to worry about the now, and I would rather the 5th starter with high potential on the Dodgers than the opening day starter for the White Sox any day.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
I don't mind. I had one other reaction to something you missed, to something you rattled off here. DJ LeMahieu. So a deep bone bruise sounds like a pretty long-term injury to me. I know they're saying, it's not for sure he'll miss opening day, but I think it's pretty for sure. Does Anthony Volpe move up to the leadoff spot?
I was thinking about that. He was leading off here on Monday, and he's had a great spring. So it's possible.
Ahead of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. I mean, it might be the most primo place to bat, certainly for scoring runs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. So we'll see. Opening day coming soon. Reds updates here. We've got quite a bit. Jake Fraley left Monday after fouling a ball off his lower body. We'll have to wait to learn more there. Nick Martinez is locked into a rotation SPARP and could have some SPARP appeal in deeper points leagues. Andrew Abbott and Brandon Williamson are competing for their 5th starter job, but Nick Lodolo is set to be ready for the Reds rotation April 10th against the Brewers. So, Welsh, does he just take that spot from Abbott or Williamson when he's ready to go? Nick Lodolo?
Yeah, I don't think there's a question. Once he's ready to go, he is back into that rotation. I am still worried about him. I've been like, I don't like guys that are like outside the top 200. We really shouldn't be like too alarmist about any of those type of players. But there is something about like those crew of kind of sleepery pitchers that are sitting around there when Lodolo's there. And it's like Lodolo's man, we talked about it at the Open with Blake Snell. You want to talk about crash and burns. Lodolo kind of has that same crash and burn effect. I'm going to still trust. It's been a super slow spring. I know he's thrown some side sessions on the backfields. I'm going to probably still trust it because his ADP is just astronomically low.
Yeah, 244.2 is the ADP there for Nick Lodolo. Let's take our final break. When we return, a quick starter sit. That's right. We're there already because the Dodgers and Padres, the Korea series starts this Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern time. We've got a live draft tomorrow night. This is our last chance to actually talk about this before games are happening. So we'll do that. Let's take a break. We'll talk about that game right after this.
The blackout mystery remains.
Welcome to March Madness. You just never know in the tournament who is going to shine.
Stream March Madness live on any device, anywhere, and be ready for anything.
Dodgers taking on the Padres in Korea Wednesday and Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern time, 3 a.m. Pacific. I actually will not. I was tempted to stay up all night and just kind of watch these games, but I can't do it. It just doesn't make sense.
No chance.
I think the Dodgers pitchers are easy calls, right? Like starting Tyler Glasnow and Yamamoto. The only thing, Yamamoto was a little shaky at times throughout spring training. Are you guys just throwing both of them right away?
I mean, you drafted Yamamoto as your ace. I don't think you're sitting your ace, even if
all in. You don't know how to swim, kid? Get out there, figure it out. That's what I'm doing.
What about on the other side, the Padres? We've got Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove. Darvish has looked pretty good this spring. Musgrove up and down. The last start he had against the Oakland A's said he figured some things out, and he did look much better in that start. But going up against a monster of a lineup here in the Dodgers.
You know, I'd still start him. I'd be more likely to start Musgrove than Darvish.
Oh, me too. That's interesting you said that. I didn't know if you would, if we would be on that same train. I feel dicey about Darvish. Also, like, I had someone ask me that start and sit question. I'm like, anything could happen right now. We don't know how stunted the offenses are going to look sometimes at the start, or if it's going to be on the pitching side. We could see 18 runs by the Dodgers, or we could see Darvish, spin 7 shutout innings. I just don't trust it. Darvish, his inconsistencies are starting to kind of still like looming with me. I think Musgrove is going to simplify things. I'm going to go with Musgrove over Darvish if I had to choose. So Darvish is the only one that I'm potentially sitting out of the 4 starters.
But most likely, I agree. Darvish is the one I'm most likely to sit. But most likely, if you drafted Darvish, you drafted him to start for you. And I think sitting him right away is just getting a little too cute. But
he's like SP 4 or 5 for most teams, though.
Yeah, but it's an extra start that nobody else is going to give you, right?
True. Yeah, but it is an extended week. If we're counting these games, this is that like wild big collection week.
If it's an extended week, that's even more the case because either he's, if you're lumping this series in with the first weekend of the season, then he's going to be one of very few 2-star pitchers. If you're lumping this weekend with an extended, first weekend through the first full week, a 19-day scoring period, basically, that he's going to be one of the only 3-star pitchers. So,
how much is that going to hurt waiting 8 days, by the way, or whatever it is, if he gets blown up for 8 runs and you're sitting there looking at your team for an entire week and you're like, I hate baseball.
Yeah, but that's, that comes with the territory. Yeah, I think it'd be a rare scenario where I sat anybody, but Darvish would be the most likely. And, if you're out there wondering who does this apply to, not many people, I will say. Most leagues have not drafted yet.
Yeah.
They're going to be drafting this weekend.
Smart people.
If not later. But if your Roto League specifically has draft, it's a Roto League. There's really no reason not to count this series because you'll get a chance. Everybody will get a chance to reset their lineups again. If it's a head-to-head league, you get the complication of okay, how does this fit in with the first scoring period? And you should probably lean against counting it in that scenario, unless you're like a hyperactive commissioner who's willing to adjust people's lineups during the long wait between this series and opening day.
Jackson Merrill has been in the news. He will be the Padres opening day starting center fielder. And what size leagues would you guys be looking to start him? I kind of feel the same way. Like, if you drafted him in a roto league, why not just get the extra plate appearances, right? So just throw him out there.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who your middle infield option is. I'd weigh. There's a good chance you got him as a bench player, and so you have just a better middle infielder there. Though if it's a close call, I'd probably lean toward getting the extra games from Jackson Merrill. It's not outfield eligible yet, unfortunately, because I think that would be easier in those 5 outfielder leagues. But yeah, I'd consider, if you got a really good middle infield option, maybe don't. If you've got a suspect one, maybe do.
Any other fringe hitters that you should consider? James Outman, Graham Pauley, Jake Cronenworth?
As far as sitting or playing, I mean, because I think I'm in for most starters. The Jackson Merrill thing is kind of interesting. I'm probably leaning away from him just simply because I think it's a pretty tall task. You're traveling. You're going to see Yamamoto. I don't know how many times he saw Yamamoto in spring. You're going to see Tyler Glass now just absolutely pumping in big foul. This would be the scenario that, though I like Jackson Merrill and I think Jackson Merrill's sneaky, I think he's a sneaky rookie of the year candidate. I just don't know this is the situation, and he might only get, I guess he's going to get both of these games, but most of the common named starters that you've drafted, I'm not looking to bench any players. The fringier guys, like I don't really consider Outman like the fringy. I consider like Merrill the fringy. Maybe if somebody playing really deeply picked up a Graham Pauley, something like that, Gavin Lux, like those players I can easily move without. But like the main core players, I'm looking to start.
Outman would be fringy in a 3 outfielder league, I'd say, but just the chance of getting 2 extra games, and that it's 2 righties that the Dodgers are facing. Yeah. So I think if you really want to be sneaky, if it's like a daily lineup scenario, Jason Hayward is somebody you could maybe slot in there if you have the roster space that you can afford to mess with that. So it's 2 righties on schedule for both teams.
All right, before we get to the top prospects, the Wyatt Langfords and Jackson Hollidays and those names, also, I did want to ask you about spring breakouts. So this is an event that happened this year for the first time. It just happened this past weekend. Each team's top prospects competed in 1 to 2 games against each other, and it's a new thing that Major League Baseball is trying out. What are your just overall thoughts on like this as an experiment, and I guess how it went the first time?
Yeah, I think I've kind of said this before. This has happened before. Like there's a track record of it. The Padres and Mariners used to do this. They had the prospect game that they would do during spring. I love personally putting this big platform up for the game's top players. Baseball's made the move to get rid of manipulation in a way to try to serve prospects coming up. It's the best thing that you can possibly do to make the game younger and make people want to be more invested, is get these new young players up. So from the macro perspective, like I think it's a great thing. I love that they were televising them. I love that for the most part, teams were putting out their big prospects and we were going to kind of get them to see them on display. Things that I would love is just common old man fantasy baseball now, or baseball people. Give me StatCast in every single park so we can have all the data so we can really analyze all these players. Maybe even make it a series would be interesting, like a tournament style, to see these guys more than one. Anybody that evaluates prospects and stuff, like you need more than a couple at bats. So a lot of people are going to make assumptions off of one at bat. Like Jacob Mizorowski, he struggled with walks and he's got big, powerful stuff. Paul Skeens pumping up 101, 102. Like you get these guys in a futures game type setting where they're pitching like 1 or 2 innings, like they're going to pump stuff up. There's big, hypered emotions that are going on. So I don't know. I think it's cool. I love hyping up these players. I love people getting to see them. And some players definitely showed out. Paul Skeens absolutely showed out with his big, powerful stuff and made everybody forget for 15 minutes about fastball shape and whatever that meant.
Yeah. It's hard to take much away from 1 to 2 games. It's just such a small sample size, but I'll just quickly touch on, some of the bigger performers here. We'll start with the hitter side of things. For the Guardians, their first base prospect, Kyle Manzardo, at 1 for 2 with a home run and 2 walks. The Guardians then rewarded him by sending him down on Monday. So that was just classic Guardians. The Red Sox outfield prospect, Ceddanne Rafaela, who can also play the infield, hit a 3-run homer. He's having a great spring. Yankees outfielder Spencer Jones went 3 for 4 with 2 homers.
Oh, baby.
Tigers third base prospect Jace Young, who's actually Josh Young's brother, went 2 for 2 with 2 home runs himself. Rays first base prospect Xavier Isaac went 3 for 3 with a double dong. That's 2 homers. And Phillies outfield prospect Justin Crawford went 2 for 3 with a steal. Scott, you'll get the first word here. When do you think we see Kyle Manzardo now that we know he got sent down? And are we sleeping on Rafaela? Because like we've kind of talked about him peripherally, but he's actually having a really good spring.
Yeah, I think we see Kyle Manzardo soon. I expected going into spring training that he would just make the team and that he and Josh Naylor would trade off first base and DH. Obviously, the Guardians had other ideas, and he's already 24. He had a good spring. I don't know. I don't know what. I guess they're doing the service time manipulation thing, or they're just, keeping depth available by sending down the guy with options. I haven't investigated the roster to see what else they could have done instead, but I don't think Manzardo is going to be out for long. I think he's a fine stash, even in deeper rotisserie leagues. He'll be one of I'm actually writing tonight about the top prospects to stash at the start of the year. So he'll be high on that list, I'm sure. And then Ceddanne Rafaela.
My favorite Ninja Turtle, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, I've moved him up in my rankings recently here. He did have swing decision issues that really manifested during his first stint in the majors. Great minor league numbers, but there was a lot of skepticism even when he was called up, even before the struggles kicked in. So it's been encouraging to see him perform well this spring. In theory, his power should play at Fenway. It plays to his pull side. He should steal bunches of bases. He should have pretty high contact rate. So there is a lot to like here. And given how shallow how thin outfield is in those 5 outfielder leagues, we're probably to the point where we should be considering Rafaela in the late rounds. I'd take Jackson Merrill over him, but it's looking pretty likely Rafaela is going to make the team, and he's deserving of some late round looks too.
Some pitching standouts I wanted to mention from this spring breakout weekend. You mentioned Paul Skeens, Welsh. I mean, he let it fly for 1 inning. He struck out 2, including Jackson Holliday. He was hitting 102 miles per hour, just insane stuff. Brewers pitcher Jacob Misiorowski, he threw 2.2 no-hit innings with 3 walks and 5 strikeouts. Red starter Rhett Lauder threw 2 perfect innings with 2 strikeouts. Cardinals pitcher Tink Hence, 2 shutout innings with 3 strikeouts. I don't know who this guy is, but like he was awesome. Yankees pitcher Brock Selvage, 4 shutout innings with 8 strikeouts. So that was pretty great. And Marlins pitcher Thomas White struck out the side in his lone inning of work. Welsh, were any of these names especially surprising to you, these performances?
Skeens wasn't. This is like a showcase thing. There's some players that know how to showcase. Skeens know how to showcase. So that was kind of a nothing burger. I will tell you, Misiorowski more and more to me is feeling like we could go the relief route. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, and I don't think the team is going to make a rash decision to try to do that, but the command issues really don't. They really haven't found themselves. And he's a wiry guy that can pump it up really high. You look at Devin Williams with the injury, and I don't know, just long term, I wonder if they would go that route. Rhett Lauder, though, just really want to shout him out. I talked to him the day before he pitched because he was hanging around at Reds camp. I happened to be there, and he was like, I'm pitching tomorrow. He has had so little work since he's been drafted, and he had so much work in college up to the College World Series that, like, for him to just step right back into action like he has, having those 2 perfect innings, I think it really undersells. His stuff is not as powerful as some of these guys we're talking about. He's a little bit more in that Tink Hence type of area, but he is an elite command pitcher. I don't know if he can ever be the number 1 pitching prospect in like fantasy for us, but really, I think he's underrated because of the lack of workload that he's had. He really might come on the scene this year, drop like some mid-2 ERA, and jump up into everybody's face if it's not already. I think he is immensely impressive.
All right, let's get into the top prospects for this season. And I realize there's like 15, 20 minutes left, but I do want to keep this moving quick and kind of like rapid fire style. So we'll get a quick thought. We'll get, again, some this new projection system, the CTW Chris Lee Welsh projections. Ridiculous. And we'll start things off with Wyatt Langford, who we've talked about all offseason and all spring. He's been amazing. He leads spring training with an 1198 OPS and 17 RBI. He also has 5 home runs. Welsh, is he up on opening day? And if so, what is a realistic projection for Wyatt Langford?
Yes, he's up on opening day for sure. I did question it at some time because of the Corey Seager situation, which, by the way, I don't know if you mentioned, he did BP on the backfields today. So as of Monday, so that's really good to see. I kind of questioned that would be a reason for them to hold him down. Hey, we need some extra support for, for Corey Seager in the shortstop position. It's going to be an embarrassing justification. Like, well, we got to send Wyatt down because you got to really learn to get the ball from his glove and throw it. Like, what are you going to justify that he needs to do? I mean, he's dominated statistically across spring training. One negative, I suppose, that you could look at, ground ball rate was pretty high in spring training. If that's something you want to look at, is around 50%. So that is something that, like, I've never been sold that he's going to be this mashing 40 home run hitter or anything like that. He can get very line drivey, and we'll have to see over time, like, how that continues to develop. But yes, he breaks out. Yes, I do think that there could be some wavering ups and downs. I don't think he is going. Now, the big question I get is, like, you were so convicted about Corbin Carroll last year. Do you feel that way about any of the prospects this year? I actually don't. I don't feel like overwhelmingly I've got to take these guys top 50. There's going to be minimal struggles. I don't feel that way, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be great. So I think Langford could run into a few things, but I still have a pretty aggressive line for him. My CTWPs, if we will, with Wyatt Langford, I think he's going to hit. I put 275, between 270 and 275. I'm actually open to that even being less. 25 homers, 80 runs, 85 RBIs. And this is the guy, I think he steals less. I have 12 stolen bases on him. I think it can go less. By the way, last year, the Rangers had the least stolen bases as a team in baseball. So I don't know if they're going to give Wyatt Langford this massive green light overall. Maybe they will. If he were hitting like 2, I actually think that opportunity could come up a little bit, but I'm not going to be hyper aggressive on his stolen bases. But I do think the power numbers will be good. And the reason I'm more aggressive on the runs and RBI are the one thing they have proved is he's going to hit high-ish in that lineup. And it doesn't look like he's going to hit much further down than 5. Even 6 isn't that big of a deal. But if he does, if Evan Carter struggles at all, and you also all of a sudden have Simeon, you have Simeon, Seager, and then Langford hitting 3 and Adolis hitting behind him. That's ridiculous. I might be underselling it, but this is like a safe line. And this is why Langford can be drafted in the top, 80, top 75, because this is a pretty aggressive line I gave him. I just cut him short a little bit on the stolen bases. He actually kind of looks like Gleyber Torres in the outfield if you think about projected categories.
The ADP over the past week is 87.5 at the NFBC, the 21st outfielder. He's going right around Brian Reynolds and Seiya Suzuki. That line that you read off, it sounds a lot like what I'm expecting.
Sounds like a lot like Brian Reynolds.
Yeah, like a Brian Reynolds or a Seiya Suzuki. So.
Yeah. And I do want to stress that is the more guarded projection, which isn't to say he doesn't have downside.
Yeah.
Same with Choria, the one you gave there. But I try not to think in guarded, measured terms when I'm drafting prospects. I try to dream of the upside because I feel like that's the whole reason you're drafting them, right? You're hoping to hit a home run at a point in the draft where there are few home runs to be found.
What do you think is dream scenarios in your mind? Because I know
Langford?
what it is in my brain. Yeah. What's your dream Langford, why you're reaching for him? I'll tell you what mine is after.
Kyle Tucker?
30-30?
Maybe trade off some home run, maybe trade off some stolen base. I think stolen bases is the least safe of those contributions, but that would be kind of the dream scenario for Wyatt Langford. And the dream scenario for Jackson Chourio, I think, would be something like Julio Rodriguez's rookie season.
Yeah, and I have, I will tell you, I have one player we're going to talk about on this when we get to him that is similar to a rookie last year in their production, but it's not Langford. I think Langford's dream scenario in his first season is like a 30-20 season with 100 RBI. I want to stress also, Gunnar Henderson had 100 runs in his rookie year. It's not ridiculous for run and RBI numbers to be big. Langford legit could have 100 season, 30 homers, 20 stolen bases, hit 280, and he's a top 2-round player for sure. And that's why you're drafting him. But I like the idea that the baseline is the Brian Reynolds area, which, by the way, we like to draft. But you're smart. You're smart in taking that upside. You do want to think in those terms, so you don't talk yourself out. Well, I'll just get Brian Reynolds because it's the same thing.
With the key being that you can't assume that upside outcome is going to happen and start elevating them to the 5th round. Like, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And it is in contrast to Corbin Carroll, because I was doing that with Corbin Carroll by the end of last draft season. I was drafting him as early as like round 4. I think it's some 15 team leagues. I even took him in round 3. And I don't have the same confidence level, like you said, in Langford or Chourio that I did in Carroll at this time last year. But if you can get them around the pick 100 range, maybe even as early as 80 if it's a shallow league, I'd be willing to do it for the upside.
And the biggest thing, sorry, I know we'll move on. The last thing is, because there's a player that I think this kind of happens to, the biggest discrepancy in my mind, why I was so aggressive and annoying about Corbin Carroll, I thought the projected stolen bases were laughable. And I said it everywhere I could. Laughable when you show me 16, 18 stolen bases. Embarrassingly stupid. And that was my pushback, that it was so aggressively wrong. A lot of these projections, they're in the general space, but there is one guy I kind of think that we haven't talked about him yet that I think is in that kind of Corbin Carroll-ish, something's being wrong right now.
What is the opposite of rapid fire? Would it be like slow water? Because I feel like that's what we just did with Wyatt Langford.
But Langford's important, Frank. We'll be quick.
He is very important. Let's do like a minute or less on the rest of these, just so we can get to more. Evan Carter. Welsh, does he play every day? Realistic projection.
Yes, Evan Carter plays every day. I do think there could be some struggles. That lefty stuff could come into play. I don't project the power numbers to go big, but I think he can move down the lineup. He is more likely in my mind than Langford. So my CTWP projections on Evan Carter are the best batting average of any of these guys, 285, but 15 homers, 18 stolen bases, 70 runs, 60 RBI. I think, honestly, he moves down the lineup a little bit, which is going to struggle with the run and RBI numbers. And I might eat my words if he continues hitting like 3 or 4 and he does keep mashing. But I'm under 20 on both the counting stats of power and stolen bases.
Scott, how do you rank Langford, Chourio, and Carter for this season?
I do think Carter's the safest. I've said all along Christian Yelich type production is what I'm expecting from him. I will rank them Chourio, Langford, Carter, but I'm drafting them within 20 spots of each other.
All right, let's just knock out all the Orioles. Jackson Holliday, Welsh, is he up on opening day? Realistic projection.
That's my guy. That's the one that I think the projection is incorrect. I do believe he's on opening day. They even said, by the way, they said that Kobe Mayo doesn't probably make the roster because Jackson Holliday, if Jackson Holliday makes it. So I am more aggressive on him. I have him as my top guy. I have a 275 batting average. I think it could be higher. Would not be shocked if he were to hit like 290 or so, but I am treating him a little bit closer to Bobby Witt. I played down the power, but I'm giving him 15 homers, 75 runs, 60 RBI. And here's the thing, 30 stolen bases. And the projections, I think, have him like under 15 across the board, or at least under 20. I think this is wrong. Orioles are going to steal. He's going to do that. I think he's going to be a big doubles hitter this year. I might be underplaying the runs, by the way, as well. But it's the stolen bases, I think, that are wrong on Jackson Holliday.
And he might just be so good in a points league, too. I mean, between the plate discipline, even if it's not home run power, we could get lots of doubles. And so, again, that will play up even more in a points league. Scott, how do you rank Colton Cowser, Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad in terms of fantasy impact this season? They're all talented players, but the problem we've talked about, the Orioles just have a lot of depth right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Cowser number 1 because I feel like his spring performance, he's kind of leapfrogged Kjerstad in the outfield pecking order. Who's number 2? That's a tougher one. I'm going to say Mayo right now because I saw a report earlier today that there's a chance Mayo could make the team if Holliday doesn't. Now, I think Holliday's going to, but if they're that close to introducing Mayo as their everyday third baseman, then, you know, he could be up pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. Welsh, we spoke about Jackson Merrill a little bit earlier on. What are your expectations for him this season? Because he's such a good contact hitter, but do the power and speed translate right away here in the majors?
No, I think there's going to be a little bit of struggle with it. I think I might have even given him an aggressive line. I gave him a 280 batting average. I guess I'm being a little too Pollyanna about the batting averages, but also like Langford, Jackson Holliday, Jackson Merrill. Those are specifically players that have really good contact skills. And that's something that Jackson Merrill does really well. I went 15 homers, 15 stolen bases. I just think he's going to hit kind of lower in the lineup, scoring a lot more runs, 75 runs, but only 50 RBI. So I don't think he's going to be a big RBI guy. I do think at the end of the day, if you were to say what will be more, power or stolen bases, I think it'll lean stolen bases on his side. but I think he will be a good batting average run source. And then you're hoping things click. And they had been clicking on the power front as of recent, but I think he's going to surprise some people this year.
Yeah, I think Jackson Merrill homered in back-to-back games here in the spring, and I think he just had like a multi-hit game in one of those games against I think they were facing the Korean national team or another different team. But yeah, Jackson Merrill obviously had a great spring, and that's why he's earned their starting center field job. The ADP since Friday for Jackson Merrill is 276.6. And Scott, I think obviously for you at least, he's worth that price, right? I think you said he's around 250 for you.
Actually, I looked. He's more around 200. So I have him 70 picks higher than his ADP.
Okay. Welsh, could Graham Pauley be a sneaky add in deeper leagues? Sounds like he's going to start at third base while Manny Machado is still kind of rehabbing the elbow and playing DH. We mentioned last week that he gives off some Spencer Steer vibes from last year. The difference is that he doesn't have Great American Ballpark to hit in.
I am going to lean no, unfortunately. I like Graham Pauley, and I got some great video you can check on my timeline of Graham Pauley just destroying baseballs. But Pauley really showed off some of the contact struggles in the AFL. He can get into some really bad trends. I think he's going to struggle from a batting average perspective. I wouldn't be shocked if he unlaunches a homer or two, but I don't think he's going to be super consistent. So I'm going to bet against Pauley unless it's like the deepest of deep leagues right now.
Let's talk about James Wood with the Nationals. He's having a huge spring, and the Nationals have not sent him down yet. I find that pretty interesting. 13 for 40 this spring. That's a 325 average, 3 homers, 3 steals, a 1085 OPS, and a 25% strikeout rate. Welsh, the problem here, Scott and I spoke about this, I believe, on our Mailbag podcast last week. There's kind of this prospects limbo where if there's a top prospect on a bad team, if he isn't up on opening day, why wouldn't they just save his prospect eligibility for the following year, right? Like if he's going to be a mid-year call-up, just save him until September, leave that prospect eligibility for the next year, and then you're in play for another draft pick. So what do you think about that when it comes to James Wood? Is there any chance we see him this year with the Nationals?
Of course, there's a chance. This year, I thought you were going to say like opening day. Like I think that's done. Like they're going to go to AA. The part of my problem with this team, they made that commitment. They're like, guess what we really like? Eddie Rosario, Joey Gallo. These guys are cool. And it's like, no, they're not. Those are not the players that anybody wants. You should develop these young players. They're clearly not. They're going to build those players up, try to create some trade value, get something out of it. Maybe some compensatory pick, just something at the trade deadline. I assume Dylan Cruz and James Wood are not going to be likely until that August area. But to your point, why bring them up at all? Bring them up into September so they don't exhaust eligibility. So the following year, you get not only the compensation, but if they were to win Rookie of the Year, you get the extra money. So I don't think they're going to be aggressive. And I think all these ridiculous signings are proof that they are not in the market to showcase young talent.
Let's talk about Junior Caminero of the Tampa Bay Rays. He will start the season at AAA, and the Rays like to slow play their prospects. Caminero does not turn 21 until July. Scott, we'll start with you this time. When do you think we see Caminero with Tampa Bay?
Earlier than not. So he's a strange case because they did call him up last September. It seemed like they were setting him up to be a Rookie of the Year candidate this year and hopefully score some draft picks from that. But then, it became pretty clear from their offseason moves that they weren't leaving a spot open for him. I'm sure they want to see Jonathan Aranda, and he deserves to be seen, and Curtis Mead, same thing. They've had a series of injuries already. How many more will it take to get Caminero on the roster? Not that many more. Of course, at some point, Josh Lowe is going to be back, and some of these injured guys will be returning. But as we say, life finds a way, Frank. So I would think before June, Caminero is playing regularly in the majors. He'll be very high on that top prospects to stash list of mine as well.
Welsh, if we get Caminero sometime in May, let's say we see him for 120 games this year, what would you project for Junior Caminero?
I think Caminero I actually wouldn't be shocked if he did one of those like 300 at bat, like 20 homer stints where it's like some crazy thing and we're projecting it out. But 120 games, I legit think you're going to get 20 plus homers out of Caminero. I actually think he is the prime player to draft as your first bench spot and hold and be comfortable holding for a bit, because one thing we know, he will be the player that everybody wastes their fab on. They will unload their fab if he becomes available when he's not drafted. If you can stomach it, I think he's the player that you draft, hold on the bench for a little bit, see if there's any rumbling, see if the Rays can move Isaac Paredes. Because if Caminero is given the opportunity, he legit might be a 30 home run hitter this year.
All right, I'm going to throw a bunch of pitching prospects your way, Welsh. Paul Skeens, like Caminero, we know will start the season in the minors. I would assume the same thing with Jackson Jobe of the Tigers and Ricky Tiedemann of the Blue Jays. Although, I mean, everything that's happened with the Blue Jays and Manoah, that fifth starter job, it looks like it's Bowden Francis's now, but I think Tiedemann could probably take that pretty quickly. When do you think that we see these guys? Paul Skeens, Jackson Jobe, Ricky Tiedemann?
I would not be shocked if we got the shocking announcement that Ricky Tiedemann made the opening day roster. I think that is a possibility. Bowden Francis, come on.
Bowden Francis has looked good.
Come on. No, Ricky Tiedemann.
Like, I think Bowden Francis could be like Tyler Wells good.
All right. Well, I'll eat my words when it happens, and I'll get a Bowden Francis. I get a Bowden Francis jersey if it happens. But I think Tiedemann could. I think Tiedemann will get like 100 innings at the major league level this year. I think they want to push that. I think Skeens, I think Skeens could be anywhere from May 1st to July. I really think they could screw on with it. I'm less optimistic about Jackson Jobe. As amazing as he looked, he really shined in short stints. I just think they might baby him a little bit more. And they've got a lot they want to get out of Matt Manning and Casey Mize right now. So
they can't put them both in the rotation.
I'm the least optimistic about Jackson Jobe compared to the other two.
4 hitters that we know will be up on their respective teams on opening day. Colt Keith with the Tigers, Michael Busch with the Cubs, Mason Wynn with the Cardinals, Austin Wells with the Yankees. Scott, there just doesn't seem to be much enthusiasm for either of Colt Keith or Michael Busch. There's enthusiasm from you, but just in general, in terms of ADP, it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah. And I have more enthusiasm for Busch than Keith personally. I think that park's tough for everybody in Detroit, but I think especially a left-handed hitter whose exit velocities are not as high as they could be. I think that could be a problem for Keith. Busch, I mean, he's going to a good place to hit most days, and it is just as assured of a lineup spot as Keith seems to be, and has great on-base skills. Always did throughout the minors, even when he was kind of struggling at the newest level. He had a few stages like that, climbing the Dodgers system. I don't know. I think if this happened a year ago for Busch, there'd be a lot more enthusiasm. I mean, obviously third base is a lot deeper now than it was then, and that's part of it. But I just think people look at 26 in the age column and they're like, okay, clearly this is a quadruple A guy. I mean, the Dodgers didn't have a spot for him. They avoided trading him for a long time. I know he was considered a prime trade asset, and they kept holding out. They finally had to give in and used Busch to kind of converted Busch into 2 other longer term prospects so they could kind of still preserve that future upside without wasting Busch, And so it could go very well. I find it's hard to get him on my roster sometimes, even in 12-team leagues. It's hard for me to get him in. So I understand, but I also don't understand. And I think in leagues where he goes undrafted, he should be at the top of your scout team.
Well, so I know that they play very different positions and have very different skill sets, but how would you rank these 4 in terms of their impact this season? Colt Keith, Michael Busch, Mason Wynn, Austin Wells.
I am going to go Michael Busch one because I completely agree with what Scott said. That's my guy. I think the send down of Pete Crow Armstrong also told us a whole lot. By the way, look at the roster. With Busch, they only have 4 lefties in that between the bench and the starting lineup, so they need lefty bats. So I think there's a commitment to Busch. So it's Busch, it's Colt Keith, and then it's like a cavern, and then it's like Mason Wynn, and then it's like another small like crevice, and then it's Austin Wells.
Welsh, talk to me about your boy, Jordan Lawler. Obviously, you're out there in Arizona. Big D-backs fan, we know. Does he need an injury to get to the team? Or do you think maybe a good first month in the minors coupled with a bad first month from Geraldo Perdomo can get this done?
Well, the latter is likely. Perdomo absolutely stinks on offense. He's a new Nick Ahmed, horrible in spring, horrible at the back half of last year. He can't hit. He's an amazing defender. They do love him. But Lovello is really stubborn, so it's only so long. I am more worried about Jordan Lawler and what their full thought process is of him. I will throw this out. I don't think they're going to do this, but I would not be shocked if we got a little Jordan Lawler's testing the outfield. If there was an outfield injury, like we're going to see him there. I think the bat is holding him back because I think he's fine defensively. The bat has not progressed enough where they can justify taking a all-star in Perdomo off the field. So I'm a lot less optimistic about Jordan Lawler right now, unless we do see, but even a hot, like first month, it's in the PCL. So we can question that. So I don't know. I'm pretty lost on Jordan Lawler right now.
It's got two other pitching prospects that do have some excitement. Drew Thorpe with the White Sox, who I think gave up 8 or 10 earned runs here on Monday. It's pretty bad outing for him. And Christian Scott with the New York Mets. Who do you think, when they get called up this season, there will be more excitement around from a fantasy perspective? Drew Thorpe or Christian Scott?
I would be more excited for Christian Scott, who I think has great swing and miss stuff and a less problematic arsenal, let's say. Whether or not the enthusiasm will be shared by fantasy baseballers everywhere, I think it kind of depends. It kind of just depends how the hype builds over the course of the year. You know, if a guy's dominating every outing at AAA, then enthusiasm, excitement can build up really quickly. But right now, he's less of a name for fantasy Christian Scott than Drew Thorpe is.
Welsh, bring us home here. Rank these final 5 hitter prospects in terms of impact this season. Chase DeLauder with the Guardians, Joey Ortiz with the Brewers, Pete Crow Armstrong with the Cubs, Justin Henry Malloy with the Tigers, and Thomas Saggese with the Cardinals.
All right, we are going to go with my boy Chase DeLauder, who did not get sent down yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but he has shown up in spring. Everything that we saw in the AFL, he's number 1. Joey Ortiz is going to be number 2, just by virtue of playing time. I'm going to go down. I got to do this. Thomas Saggese is going to be 3, even though I'm worried about the playing time because there are so many guys around. But if, Edmund just doesn't come back right, by the way, Victor Scott, we're not talking about here. I think he should be drafted everywhere. He could be a league winning type of guy. He might break opening camp, get Victor Scott. I'm going to go Saggese 3, Justin Henry Malloy 4, and then Pete Crow Armstrong. I'm going to go 5, even though he has probably one of the best paths to coming back. I don't know if that bat's going to come back alive, but I think the top 2, DeLauder and Ortiz, are the ones you should be paying attention to right now.
That is a bad job by me, not having Victor Scott be part of this conversation. Would he rank at the top of that list that I just gave you, Welsh?
Hands down. You know what? If they announced Victor Scott is a starter today, higher than Jackson Merrill. Easy.
Ooh,
not even a question.
I think Chris Towers would agree with you. I think he put like a small bet in on Victor Scott to lead the majors in stolen bases this year. So
I like that one. I have a couple of those. I haven't done that one, but if he gets all the playing time and he hits how he has been, guy's going to steal 50 in his sleep.
All right, we're going to wrap there for Scott and the Welsh. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.